Chapter 381, Luring into Demonhood. Once Han Shao returned to his official residence, Kaliz immediately reported to Han Shao that third Prince Lawrence had been waiting for him all along. Lancelot Empire's King Uhtred originally had three princes: eldest Prince Charles, second Prince Cyril, and youngest Prince Beverly. Of the three princes, eldest Prince Charles was intrepid and fond of battle. Second Prince Cyril was the standard for a cultured noble, while the youngest prince was only 15, still yet to be considered an adult. TL note: I know Beverly is more commonly known as a feminine name, but 1. That's what is written in the RAWs. 2. Beverly was traditionally a commonly given masculine name. When Lawrence's identity was revealed, he became the third prince. However, the title of third prince was only what the public addressed him as on the surface. The way they silently criticized him was hidden within their hearts. Han Shao had just returned to his residence when he found out from Kaliz that Lawrence was waiting for him, causing him to exclaim internally at Lawrence's information network. After entering Asen City from Bretel City, Han Shao had never showed his face to anyone, only visiting the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force as well as the Dark Mantle headquarters. News from Bretel City should not have arrived that quickly. It was evident from Lawrence's arrival that he had other quick information channels. Compared to his former cheerfulness, Lawrence's expression had an added gloominess. It was unclear if it was because things recently had not gone according to his wishes. Lawrence's temperament had become colder. However, when he saw Han Shao enter, he still embraced Han Shao while laughing heartily. After an intimate discussion with Candide, Han Shao had a new level of understanding toward Lawrence's plans and thoughts. Seeing Lawrence initiating a hug, Han Shao also had a happy expression, hugging Lawrence tightly out of a sudden. He then inquired on Lawrence's health, still laughing loudly. After exchanging pleasantries, Han Shao waved his hand to instruct the servant that had sent light refreshments to withdraw. He lightly sipped on his cup of tea that originated from the south of Odin Empire before looking toward Lawrence and said, "It hasn't been long since we met. I didn't expect that the situation has already reached such an extent. Brian, there's finally news of you. This period of time my days in the capital have been unbearable. Charles has been undermining me, and currently within the capital, apart from my foster father and Uncle Boris, none of the nobles support me. This is because my identity is relatively awkward. I know those nobles despise me. However, this situation isn't something I can avoid. Otherwise Charles and the rest definitely wouldn't let me off." Lawrence didn't hypocritically say anything else, getting right to the point and venting out his current predicament. Of the other three princes, eldest Prince Charles had Grand Duke Ashburn's support. On top of that, his mother was also the current queen, hence he was the most likely to succeed the throne. Second Prince Cyril was usually in the capital and had friendly relations with every powerful noble, conducting himself as someone who was good-natured and understood the will of the people. Hence there was also a group of nobles that supported him. Although the youngest Prince Beverly was not yet considered an adult, his mother was the woman the king currently loved the most dearly. With her constantly whispering sweet nothings to the king, Uhtred appeared to extremely love Beverly. Furthermore, Beverly's grandfather was Northern Bimson City's Marquis, and his clan's strength was not to be belittled. Actually, if not for his overly awkward identity with his father and uncle's support, in addition to his master being Sacred Sword Master Carl Ascot, Lawrence, who had joined in belatedly, still had some capital. Unfortunately, due to his identity as an illegitimate child, these were not considered as a massive capital, simply unable to provide him with any assurance. Han Shao knew from Candide's words that old astrologer Madame Grace had the power to sway the decision with her words. Lawrence's master Carl had not declared his support, seemingly also waiting for Madame Grace's opinion. Lawrence did not seem to have an understanding in this, filled sighing in despair as he narrated to Han Shao. After a while, Han Shao finally replied, "I've just returned from Dark Mantle and had obtained a piece of extremely important information. Within Dark Mantle there is a senior astrologer, Madame Grace. One word from her is capable to bring about immense benefits for you. The reason why your master has delayed declaring his position is perhaps also due to his consideration of the bigger picture for Lancelot Empire." After Han Shao had described all the information gathered by Dark Mantle to Lawrence once, Lawrence knitted his brows and pondered for a while. He then gazed deeply at Han Shao, replying, "Brian, thank you. This information is extremely important. Madame Grace is my father's personal astrologer, and I've heard a few rumors about her. However, Astrology is too vague. In any case, I need to make early preparations. Han Shao nodded his head, understanding that to a few people that were fond of power, the mysterious astrology wasn't something that would be overly bothered about. Just take the incident this time round. Even though the venerable astrologer Grace said Lawrence would bring prosperity to Lancelot Empire, the other three princes would surely not surrender and willingly yield the throne to Lawrence. The mysterious astrology was only one aspect. Those that strived for strength and power would definitely not willingly resign to their fates. Lawrence was such a person. When Han Shao heard Lawrence's narration, he couldn't help thinking of Lawrence's plans and nodding inwardly. Han Shao knew Lawrence was definitely not easy to deal with. However, Han Shao's choice was Lawrence. The tough for Lawrence was to deal with, the more relieved Han Shao was. He smiled and nodded after hearing what was said, replying, "Be at ease, whatever the final conclusion of the astrology is, myself and Bretel City would stand behind you. Who cares about what divine prophecy? We would still stake it all." Of course, if the situation is beneficial to us, that would naturally be even better. Brian, thank you. If I am able to succeed the throne, Dark Mantle will only have you as the head in the future. Lawrence solemnly promised Han Shao. I'm not taking into account your promises for the future. I'm only basing on your previous assistance and our friendship that I spare no effort in aiding you. Han Shao smiled as he explained to Lawrence, things in the future were forever hard to predict. Nothing was absolute. Promises of the future were just like astrology, both matters only vague and illusory. I understand. It looks like I should make a move through Madame Grace. Although I know such an action might be fruitless, I still need to try. Lawrence understood that to characters such as Madame Grace and Carl Ascot, they viewed the future of Lancelot Empire with utmost importance rather than who obtains power. After Lawrence received Han Shao's guarantee, he felt as though a weight has been lifted from his shoulders. He then discussed further with Han Shao on a few details before departing Han Shao's residence. A while after Lawrence had left, Han Shao couldn't help knitting his brows as he exited the hall and looked toward the adjacent roof. As though he was muttering to himself, he said, "He has already left. Why have you still remained here?" After he said that sentence, a shadow descended from the opposing roof. Balins, who Han Shao had previously seen in the rose garden, suddenly appeared in front of Han Shao. A killing intent reeking of blood slowly drifted out, flooding Han Shao from all directions. The old assassin Balin's face was covered with scars, appearing terrifyingly malevolent. He had been hiding there ever since Lawrence entered Han Shao's residence. When Han Shao arrived, he could already sense the strong smell of blood on Balin's body. He knew that Balin's objective was to protect Lawrence, hence he didn't bother about his existence. However, after Lawrence and Han Shao had finished speaking, Balins theoretically should have left. Yet Han Shao saw that he did not depart together with Lawrence. Hence he puzzledly stepped out, appearing to be talking to himself as he questioned Balins. "How were you able to pinpoint my location?" Balins somewhat suspiciously inquired, his gaze focused on Han Shao while killing intent pervaded his whole body. Han Shao knew the toy to his hands have been dyed in blood and that he deliberately trained in this aspect. Balance was able to cause a killing intent to pervade naturally. It wasn't that his heart was filled with killing intent. Han Shao smiled faintly before saying, "The killing intent on your body is too strong. Also, you don't know how to completely conceal your aura. Naturally, I would be able to sense it." I suppose that ever since you trained your killing intent, you should have stopped being an assassin. The top assassins could completely conceal the killing intent from their bodies. Only in that way would they be able to kill the target in one strike before the target can even react. Balins was formerly one of the finest assassins. However, he clearly focused on researching the users of the killing intent. Gradually he was unable to contain the strong killing intent, and the scent of blood on his body also becoming thicker. To a top assassin, these were unacceptable flaws. Balins was stunned from what he heard. After a while he replied, "That's right, when the killing intent from my body was unable to be concealed anymore, I stopped being an assassin. However, when in actual combat, my killing intent is able to destroy the enemy's willpower. When fighting head-on against someone of the same strength, I am able to hold absolute advantage. Even two opponents attacking together might not be my opponent." This person was actually a good sapling. With such a body condition, training in the demonic arts would result in twice the result for half the effort. With Han Shao's meticulous guidance and by only specializing in a demonic god-slaying martial technique, he definitely could become an outstanding character and his strength would also advance rapidly. Actually, I have a method to conceal the killing intent on your body and also a way to better control and utilize the killing intent. Hey, your self-created path has similarities with the martial technique I train in. If you train in accordance with my method, you would definitely be able to substantially raise your strength in a short time. Furthermore, there's still unlimited potential to improve. Han Sha-O suddenly recalled that King Out had previously had the desire to let him inherit the martial skills hall. This Balance was a suitable candidate, however the only apprehension Han Sha-O had was the relationship between Balance and Sacred Sword Master Karl Asket. As long as Balance cultivated the technique Han Sha-O imparted, Han Sha-O had complete confidence in controlling Balance and making him a loyal henchman in the future. Hence Han Sha-O began testing him. Hey all! Do let me know where I can improve. Also, some people have already asked if I have a Patreon. Do check it out here. It's still a work in progress. Chapter 382, Snatching One's Subordinate. When Balance heard Han Sha-O's statement, the earthworm-like scars on his face seemed to be alive due to his excitement, causing those who see him to be frightened as though they've seen a ghost during the day. Even Balin's current master, Sacred Sword Master Karl, did not have a way to control the killing intent on his body. All along, Balance had been experimenting by himself. As the exploration into the unknown was filled with uncertainty and danger, even Sacred Swords Master Karl was unable to provide him with any form of assistance. To Sacred Swords Master Karl Asket, Balin's meticulous studying of killing intent was completely unorthodox. He didn't believe in wasting time on such things and had previously persuaded Balance to go back to training in the orthodox field of training Dochi. Unfortunately, Balance had already delved deeper and deeper, gradually becoming obsessed in the experimenting, and it was hard for him to extricate himself. Karl was unable to persuade Balance, and with his heart feeling disdain, he naturally would not be able to assist Balance in this unorthodox path. At present, he heard Han Sha-O mention that Han Sha-O possessed a technique that could conceal and control his killing intent. To Balance, who had always been alone in this unfamiliar field, Han Sha-O's statement was like words from heaven, as though ripping open Balin's many years of lonesomeness. Balance immediately couldn't maintain self-control. Are you for real? Due to Balin's excited mood, his face trembled violently and his tone was filled with disbelief. Previously, Balance had seen Han Sha-O's battle against brute merchant Kane, as well as the miracles Han Sha-O displayed the first time Balance saw him. These gave Balance the surprised feeling of meeting someone similar to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed behind today after Lawrence had left and attempt to chat in detail with Han Sha-O. He wanted to see if he could obtain any long-awaited gains from Han Sha-O. Affirmatively nodding his head, Han Sha-O confidently replied, "Not only to wield the killing intent on your body, I also have a way to absorb the aura of death in a battlefield. Hey, I believe that in the entire profound continent I am the only one who is proficient in such a technique." With that sentence, Han Sha-O's demonic aura ferociously flowed out. Clouds of blood-red fog suddenly emerged from Han Sha-O's body. Contained within the blood-red fog clouds was a ruthless killing intent filled with despair and endless resentment, causing one's spirit to tremble. Under Han Sha-O's mental manipulation, the clouds of killing intent transformed into blades that, similar to needles, forming a seemingly corporeal petal of a blooming blood-red sinister devilish flower. Balin's eyes popped out, his gaze fixed on Han Sha-O. The numerous crisscrossed scars on his face appeared to be wriggling about, resembling earthworms. The heavy scent of blood on Balin's body couldn't be contained as it spread out. However, he was unable to emulate Han Sha-O's proficient manipulation of this bizarre energy. Balance could sense the power contained within, as well as superficially urge a person's fighting spirit through that power. However, he had never imagined manipulating that power to the subtlety that Han Sha-O displayed. It was also from Han Sha-O's display that Balance finally understood that by continuing to practice in this field he would be able to display a brilliance and destruction that is more formidable than Dochi. "See, Count Brian, is it possible for you to teach me this martial technique?" Normally, with Balin's status and seniority, he wouldn't be acting so mannerlessly. However, he had already endured the feeling of helplessness and loss from years of fumbling in desolation for too long. Now that he saw a resplendent path appearing before his eyes, this old man who had solitarily explored the unknown all along was unable to contain himself any longer. Han Sha laughed involuntarily, apologetically shaking his head as he replied, "Hee old Mr. Ballins, you must be kidding." Not mentioning this mysterious technique, even the extensive dochi in the profound continent, it wasn't that easy for someone who wants to practice another person's dochi technique. Ballins' eyes contained a hard-to-contain dumbness. Sighing, Ballins sounded bitter as he replied, "I'm sorry I was too rude. However, I truly wish to be able to practice such a martial technique no matter the price I need to pay. In this world perhaps you are the only one who is capable of giving me guidance in this lonely path. I've already experienced too much of the danger and suffering of helplessly fumbling alone." Han Shao, who was staring fixedly on the old man's eyes, clearly saw every trace of emotion that was reflected in his eyes. When Balin's internal regret was exposed, Han Shao knitted his eyebrows, thinking hard for a while. He then hesitated for another moment, his brows still tightly knitted, as he muttered to himself, "Actually, when my teacher left behind this martial technique, he indeed did not state that it couldn't be divulged to an outsider." Ballins, who had just reached his lowest point, had a delighted expression when he heard what Han Shao said, emotionally looking toward Han Shao as he probed, "B. Brian, why you?" Flustered Ballins spoke incoherently. Nevertheless, Han Shao knew what Ballins wanted to convey. Appearing to earnestly consider for a while, only then did Han Shao suddenly say, "It's not out of the question that you wish to practice this martial technique. However, you must become a part of our sect. This can be considered me substituting my deceased teacher in accepting a disciple. However, you are always following Mr. Carl and even consider yourself his servant. I think this might not be very appropriate." "It looks as if this would be impossible." "No, it's possible, it's possible," Ballins hastily cried out in alarm. Under Han Shao's astonished gaze, Ballins immediately explained, "There is a designated time of 5 years for me to follow Master. In order to repay Master's kindness, I've already followed him for 7 years. Although I'm still willing to stay by my Master's side now I've already regained my freedom. As long as I let my Master know, it shouldn't be a problem. If you don't mind, I wish to enter your sect and receive your teachings in the mysterious technique." He didn't expect that Ballins had obviously already regained freedom, yet still willingly stayed by the side of Sacred Sword Master Carl. "It seems like this person is actually extremely suitable to be his henchman. In principle, this matter shouldn't have any problems." Nevertheless, Han Shao was still a little worried about Sacred Swordsman Carl, somewhat uneasy that he would become enemies with Carl due to this matter. However, Han Shao believed that with his current strength he need not be afraid of Sacred Swordsman Carl. Furthermore, Ballins was a candidate extremely suited for demonhood. After hesitating for a while, Han Shao explained to Ballins, "It's best if you think it over again. You must know, once you start training with me you would be under my restrictions. Furthermore, our sect has many rules. As your senior, I have the right to order you to do things you may be unwilling to do. If you refuse, it would be violating the Master's teachings. I have the right to revoke the martial techniques you have learned. In addition, you should first let Mr. Carl know and then carefully consider for a few days. Once you have carefully deliberated and have a genuine decision, you can always look for me once more to have a chat." When Han Shao said this, Ballins' eyes gradually regained its brightness. Having lived for many years, Ballins naturally wasn't an ignorant person that couldn't view a situation clearly. Although his mind was slightly flustered due to Han Shao's martial technique, when Han Shao mentioned the rules and restrictions, Ballins immediately understood the meaning Han Shao wanted to convey. "You have to listen to me completely regardless of right or wrong." This was actually the same as when he attended to his current master Carl, taking of all his master's affairs with the status of a servant, be it murder, arson or robbery. So long as master passed down the orders, he had to do his utmost in executing it. What Han Shao wanted to express was actually the same idea. After Ballins' eyes cleared, he then truly started considering his options. From Han Shao's body he could see Han Shao's ambition. Moreover, an intense viciousness could be felt from Han Shao, and he was definitely not a kindly, amiable person like Carl, no matter how you looked. Once he followed Han Shao, it looks like he would definitely resume his old trade and be involved in some shady business. However, Karl was unable to provide what he wanted, but Han Shao could. Furthermore, comparing the benevolent good-natured sacred sword master Karl and the vicious youngster Han Shao seemed more to his liking instead. Balins, whose hands had been covered in blood, recalled fondly the wonderful feeling of slaughter. Stemming from his unrestrained delving into killing intent, he had become addicted to slaughter, unable to extricate himself. Even after staying by Karl's side for many years, Balin still could not forget that feeling. Han Shao's appearance presented him with an alternative path, a path that he had been longing for. Hesitating between rationality and enticement, Balins was unable to immediately make a decision. In the end he said to Han Shao, "I will carefully consider your proposal. I will look for you when I've made a decision. No matter what you decide, I will respect your decision." Han Shao smiled as he replied. Before Balins left, he suddenly thought of something. He turned his head toward Han Shao, asking, "What is the name of this branch of martial skills that you practice?" "Sky Demon Gate." "Sky Demon Gate, Sky Demon Gate, I'll remember it," Balins muttered to himself, turning and leaping onto the roof before vanishing in the blink of an eye. Hey, once you enter the path of demons, you never be able to leave from my control. Karl, it's not that I intentionally want to snatch your subordinate. In reality, you are simply unable to properly instruct such a talent. After Balins left, Han Shao muttered to himself, feeling immensely pleased. Within the Duke's mansion, today Duke Ashburn secretly met with a few special guests, a group of clerics belonging to the Church of Light. The Church of Light's Red Archbishop Kasi, who was based in the Lancelot Kingdom, as well as a few temple knights and white priests, were chatting happily with Duke Ashburn and eldest Prince Charles within Duke Ashburn's mansion. The Church of Light was viewed as the religious organization with the largest influence in the whole continent. In the profound continent, many countries had various kinds of military organizations. Any country with the Temple of Light would have the protection of temple knights. The number of temple knights varied depending on the size of the temple. Within the Odin Kingdom, where the Church of Light was headquartered at, the Temple of Light possessed a regiment of 10,000 temple knights. All these years there always existed 10 large knight regiments with the continent. The Church of Light's temple knights have always had an impressive reputation. It is even rumored in the outside world that the Temple Knight Regiment was the strongest knight regiment in the whole continent. Furthermore, numerous figures in the Church of Light similarly had astonishing strength. For example, a character like Red Archbishop Kasi, who possessed a divine artifact, was a nightmare to anyone, especially darkness magicians and necromancers. Once they met the divine artifact wielding Red Archbishop Kasi, it would basically allow Kasi to proclaim the might of the God of Light, proving their lowliness. The Church's strength in the profound continent was unfathomably large. Faith was the biggest and the hardest thing to comprehend. Often it could cause an ordinary person to become fanatic and prejudiced and then doing unreasonable things. The Church of Light was an expert in exploiting the strength of faith, causing both the ignorant masses and nobility to become prejudiced, not necessarily in a proper orientation. Within the Lancelot Kingdom, the strength of the Church of Light similarly not be underestimated. Every city in the Lancelot Kingdom had a temple of the Church of Light. Places with a Temple of Light would naturally have the armed forces from the Church of Light. The private forces that completely worshipped the God of Light was in fact a factor of instability to any kingdom. However, perhaps it's due to the Church of Light's influence being too large in any country, the private forces of the Church of Light was actually a lawful existence. This stemmed from the thoughts and demands in worshipping the God of Light. Even Lancelot Kingdom's King Utterd accepted this tacitly. Fortunately, the Church of Light wasn't the principal church in the Lancelot Kingdom. The people also worshipped the goddess of nature, the goddess of ice and snow, as well as other deities. These numerous churches were distributed across every city in the Lancelot Kingdom, but were unable to shake the foundation of the kingdom. Now that the Lancelot Kingdom is caught up in the struggle for power by the various princes, it is inevitable that our religions choose a candidate to support. The correct choice would bring immediate benefits to their church. For the possibility to be the only religion within the Lancelot Kingdom, Kasi had precisely eyed eldest Prince Charles. That was why he would appear within Duke Ashburn's residence. The support of the enormous Church of Light was nationally a joyous affair for for Duke Ashburn. Eldest Prince Charles was similarly overjoyed. As an Orthodox knight, he already had a favorable impression of the Church of Light. When the Church of Light planned to support him, this favorable impression nationally increased many times over. Both sides were perfectly contented regarding the discussion of the pledges of power and the provision of assistance, satisfied with the collaboration. As Duke Ashburn and eldest Prince Charles showed their hospitality to the clerics, Cossey suddenly sighed before saying, "How does Lord Duke view Bretel City's Count Brian? He is just a lucky guy who curries favor as he schemes for profits. In addition, this fellow has no foresight. I believe his happy days will soon be over." Duke Ashburn's face darkened as he lightly smiled, giving his judgment of Hansha. "Oh, Lord Duke is mistaken. That person is definitely not easy to deal with. That person has the backing of the Calamity Church. Being our old adversaries that have hiddenly fought against our Church of Light for hundreds of years, we are fully aware of the fearsomeness of the Calamity Church. To be honest with you, I've previously acted personally, bringing a few temple knights to see said person. Yet I returned in failure twice and was even injured." At this point Cossey sighed again before continuing, "The Pontiff has instructed that our members within the Lancelot Kingdom should disregard all costs in eliminating this person. I hope Lord Duke will be able to help us." When Cossey mentioned the Calamity Church, both Duke Ashburn and eldest Prince Charles's expression suddenly became a little unsightly. A high-ranked noble like Duke Ashburn naturally knew of the existence of the Calamity Church. They were a demonic lair that gathered true fiends. Duke Ashburn could never have thought that Hansha actually had such an origin. This made Duke Ashburn a little apprehensive. However, Duke Ashburn and eldest Prince Charles had made a move previously. Both of them believed that Hansha was already aware of that. Regardless if it's Hansha himself or the Calamity Church, both parties were ruthless and would settle their grievances. Hence both of them understood that they had already become mortal enemies with Hansha. Although the Calamity Church was infamous, the Church of Light was capable of suppressing the Calamity Church in their few hundred years of battle. That was sufficient in proving that the Church of Light was similarly a powerful religious organization. When he heard Cossey mentioning his intention to eliminate Hansha, Ashburn immediately replied frankly, "We have tried previously, however it ended in failure. This person supports that illegitimate child. I believe sooner or later he would be at death's door." Mr. Cossey's opinion is to eliminate him earlier? Nodding his head, Red Archbishop Cossey sighed as he said, "This person is the cause of the profound continent's instability. His existence would bring about disaster to the profound continent. The Church of Light's goal all along is precisely to eliminate all existences within the continent that defied the will of God. He is precisely the target that we need to immediately get rid of." "In that case, Lord Bishop, what is your plan?" Duke Ashburn seized the moment when Cossey ended his emotional statement to question closely. "I have a plan. However, I need both of you to assist me." Red Archbishop Cossey nodded as he started describing his intention to the two of them. Chapter 383, The Otherworld. Asen City, Hansha's official residence. Within a secret room, Hanshu grasped the skeletal staff, chanting the incantation for necromancy. After a long and tedious section of incantation, a mummy lord stood before Hansha. The mummy lord was stupefied as it inspected Hansha. The entire secret room suddenly filled with a deathly scent emitted from its body. Of the 3 summoning spells at Grand Magus level, Hansha has already mastered 2 of them. He is able to proficiently summon old fey demons and mummy lords, only left with a spell for bone demons. As he still didn't truly understand the characteristics of the bone demon's body composition, Hansha temporarily still could succeed in summoning a bone demon into this world. With an order, the mummy lord unwillingly wielded the ancient strips of cloth that twisted around its body, moving its body in accordance to Hansha's directions. Nodding his head, Hansha knew that he thoroughly grasped the summoning of the mummy lord. Hansha then chanted another spell, and with a wave of the white bone staff, the mummy lord returned back to the netherworld. Keeping the white bone staff, Hansha then took out the skeletal staff obtained from the cemetery of death. Fiddling with the skeletal staff in his hand, Hansha hesitated for a while, intending to use the skeletal staff to summon the old fey demon and mummy lord. This skeletal staff was different from the white bone staff. Chanting necromancy while holding the skeletal staff would often result in the might of the summoning spell to be doubled. When Hansha used the white bone staff, he could save a little mental strength, but he would be unable to summon 2 old fey demons to the profound continent. However, If it was channeling the necromancy spell through the skeletal staff, he should be able to momentarily search for two old fey demons. Han Sha-O had the experience of using the skeletal staff when summoning evil knights. He believed that old fey demons were perhaps the same as the evil knights, and he could similarly summon two old fey demons. Han Sha-O hesitated for a moment before starting to chant the necromancy spell to summon old fey demons. When Han Sha-O's spell connected with the netherworld and the chanting reached the section to search for old fey demons, Han Sha-O's mental space suddenly felt the two targets that were separated by a long distance. These two targets were old fey demons. However, there was an incomparable distance between the two old fey demons. In the same moment, both old fey demons felt Han Sha-O's presence. When the feeling of their freedom being threatened entered their souls, the two old fey demons instinctively struggled. Han Sha-O was startled, fixing his mental strength on suppressing one old fey demon as they were too far apart. Han Sha-O's mental strength couldn't handle both old fey demons at once, their frantic resistance causing him to get a little dizzy. This was the reason why Han Sha-O's suppression became quite strenuous. At this moment, Han Sha-O understood that he had neglected an important issue. The personality of old fey demons were vastly different from that of evil knights. Although evil knights were similarly high-ranked undead creatures, there were numerous undead creatures in the netherworld. In addition, evil knights were considered to still prefer living in a group. When Han Sha-O used the skeletal staff to summon evil knights, they would often be from the same location, locating 2 or 3 evil knights and then summoning them to the profound continent. However, old fey demons were an even higher ranked existence, and their numbers in the netherworld were much lesser than evil knights. Furthermore, as high ranked existences, old fey demons dwelled in separate locations, becoming the master of that location. Basically, it highly unlikely for 2 old fey demons to live together in the same area. Han Sha-O had precisely overlooked this point. When the spell channeled through the skeletal staff, it immediately sensed 2 old fey demons were 5,000 kilometers apart. As the 2 old fey demons were too far apart, Han Sha-O couldn't handle both of them at the same time. Old fey demons were also undead creatures with a formidable soul. When Han Sha-O focused on one old fey demon, the other old fey demon suddenly revolted, causing Han Sha-O to be somewhat unable to suppress it with his mental strength. This situation happened too quickly. A necromancy summoning didn't take long. Because Han Sha-O didn't anticipate such as a situation at the beginning, he simply didn't have the means to handle it at short notice. When the 2 old fey demons sensed that Han Sha-O's mental strength was in slight disorder, they frantically resisted further. There was a sudden sharp pain in his mind. Distracted Han Sha-O's consciousness was a little routed, and he felt himself actually becoming a strand of peculiar existence. Under the pull from the souls of the 2 old fey demons, he traversed the space-time tunnel, arriving at the unknown netherworld. Han Sha-O had had the same experience once. Now that it happened a second time, Han Sha-O immediately reacted. His mental strength tenaciously wrapped around that strand of consciousness to prevent harmful substances within the space-time tunnel from intruding, as he involuntarily descended to the world filled with deathly stillness and mystery. Within the world, which seemed forever monochrome, a thick stationary layer of gray clouds obstructed the horizon. This place was filled with swamps everywhere, as well as deathly still forests that were formed from large withered trees. These withered trees seemed to have gone through thousands of years of decay and had long since been void of any moisture or nutrients. There were even ash-gray colored spider webs suspended from the tree trunks, with many bizarre tiny undead creatures wiggling on the spider web. Within the swamps, which were all over, the aura of death pervaded everywhere. The swamps gave off weird bubbles, and from time to time 1 or 2 zombies will rigidly climb out of the swamps and then proceed to aimlessly roam the vast silent netherworld. The netherworld was the final destination of departed spirits. Over the millions of years, the perpetual deathly chi continuously produced various kinds of undead creatures. When an undead creature disappears, the death chi from its body would return to this world, go through many years of bizarre evolution before once again forming another undead creature. Han Sha-O's consciousness was gradually restored. Han Sha-O slowly observed the deathly still area that was covered with swamps. During his observation, Han Sha-O tried to absorb the deathly chi from the cemetery of death and condense a body that is visible yet lacking in form for himself. However, Han Shao-O's whole body was drifting in the air. Suddenly Han Shao felt the existence of the little skeleton and the zombies. They were in a region far away, but Han Shao was able to distinctly sense their existence. As for the three evil knights that were refined later, he could only sense a faint daunt. Howl. Petty existence, you have intruded into my world without permission. I want you to suffer the burn of my fury. A shrill voice filled with incomparable anger suddenly rang in Han Shao's ears. This voice was filled with the roar of ire, scaring Han Shao greatly. With a sudden reaction to his consciousness, Han Shao felt a shadow rapidly approaching from his left. Han Shao watched attentively as one of the old fey demons that he had just attempted to summon unexpectedly appeared. The surroundings of the old fey demon were filled with hundreds of low-ranking undead creatures. Among them were ghouls, skeleton knights, zombies, and 3 hate warriors. It looks like this old fey demon should be the overlord of this area. He still remembered the aura on Han Shao's body, and when he suddenly realized Han Shao's soul appearing within his territory, the old fey demon was incessantly furious, immediately following Han Shao's aura that he just sensed, and angrily rushed toward Han Shao. In the netherworld, the old fey demon could display its strength as much as it wanted. The rich omnipresent death chi could supply him with sufficient energy. However, for Han Shao, whose consciousness has entered this world, he could not utilize his demonic arts without a physical body and could only utilize his consciousness and necromancy magic to attack. Seeing the old fey demon ferociously charging over while brandishing its sharp claws that could rip through iron and stone, Han Shao's consciousness suddenly locked onto the old fey demon's body, unleashing a soul tremor. Bang! The old fey demon's soul that was midair seemed to be heavily hammered on, the sharp pain momentarily spreading to the deepest parts of his soul. Without waiting for the old fey demon to react, many bone spears attacked through the sky, causing the old fey demon to stumble as he dodged. Another soul tremor followed immediately. The old fey demon was momentarily dazed. However, in this other world, the old fey demon had sufficient death chi to utilize, and its soul was extremely formidable. Although Han Shao's soul tremor attack was able to cause enormous harm to the old fey demon, it was unable to truly kill it. Furthermore, the bone spears were only able to leave shallow white scars on the old fey demon's body, unable to pierce this high-ranking undead creature. In such a place, Han Shao's mental strength was exhaustible. Prolonging such a situation, Han Shao's mental strength will definitely be used up. At that moment, he would not be able to contain the old fey demon. This high-ranking old fey demon would definitely be able to destroy Han Shao's soul that had descended to such a place. After the row of bone spears and soul tremor, bone prison formed, suddenly temporarily imprisoning the old fey demon within. Han Shao saw that the old fey demon did not have any reaction to the soul tremor magic and didn't continue staying in this area. His visible yet immaterial body quickly floated into the distance, resembling an ordinary wraith in the netherworld. Within the netherworld's overcast sky, there would often be wraiths floating about. These wraiths only had the simplest of consciousness and usually became food for higher ranked undead creatures. They were also the nutrient that Han Shao used in refining some of his demonic creatures. Han Shao never thought that one day he would enter the netherworld and actually be besieged by wraiths. 5 white misty wraiths suddenly surrounded Han Shao. These 5 wraiths sensed that Han Shao had a different aura from them and attempted to attack Han Shao as though he was a mutated being. When Han Shao, who was visible but had not material body, saw the 5 wraiths approaching, he could sense their ill intentions revealed by their simple consciousness. Han Shao gathered a small amount of mental strength, unleashing the soul tremor magic. With a poof, the 5 wraiths were turned into gray smoke, becoming death chi and returning to the earth. The rows of wraiths that were further away felt the momentarily explosion of power from Han Shao, immediately classifying Han Shao as a high-ranked undead creature and kept far away from Han Shao. None of the wraiths dared to approach Han Shao anymore. At a towering barren mountain peak an unknown distance away from Han Shao, there was a majestic undead palace. Within a lofty palace where there were strict rankings on the highest respected platform, the little skeleton sat upright on an enormous throne filled with sharp spikes. TL note: Game of Thrones reference. By his side were the Earth Zombie, Fire Zombie, Wood Zombie, and the seemingly timid Water Zombie. Beneath the little skeleton were 6 evil knights and 2 bone demons, as well as the previously subdued Mummy Lord. They all knelt on one knee with their heads lowered towards the little skeleton. On the palace's cold ceiling hung the bone demon that was remodeled by little skeleton with the ability to fly, as well as numerous gargoyles that curled their bodies and stood in place silently. Behind the few evil knights were a few stupid hate warriors and zombie warriors. They resembled conscientious bodyguards devotedly standing upright as though willing to risk their lives for the little skeleton at any moment. "My lord, why do you need to depart?" the previously subdued Mummy Lord humbly inquired with his head lowered. "All of you help me properly look after this place. I'll be back very soon." The little skeleton had yet to answer, only giving orders as a superior. The powerful existence from the eastern Dead Sea might come in the near future. "All of you guard this place. Do not attack others while I'm not around." "Understood, my lord." The high-ranked undead creatures all replied deferentially. Facing the fiercer little skeleton, they who were previously lords of an area couldn't help but lower their proud heads. "You can withdraw. Properly guard your respective territories." The little skeleton imposingly conveyed his intention. Apart from the 3 evil knights that had been refined by Han Sha'o's demonic magic, the other evil knights and mummy lords all withdrew after receiving the orders. "Father has come here. This world isn't the same as the material world. Without a corporeal body, Father would possibly run into danger. I must go and protect him," the little skeleton said to the Earth Zombie and the others after the subordinates have withdrawn. "We'll go too." The Earth Zombie touched its head simple-mindedly, saying, "We want to see Father in this world too." "That's out of the question. You need to stay here and look after our home." With their strength, those subordinates would find it hard to ensure the safety of this place. "I only trust you guys. This is because we have inherited the same bloodline," the little skeleton instructed before saying, "Be at ease. When I find Father, I'll bring him over." With that sentence, the flying bone demon that was hanging upside down at the top of the hall suddenly spread its wings and soared in front of the little skeleton. The 7 bone spurs on the little skeleton's back trembled, shooting into the body of the already remodeled bone demon. The huge wings of the bone demon, made of mesh-trotting flesh, flapped once, bringing the little skeleton away from the summit of the towering Death Mountain. Chapter 384 Comprehending the Netherworld. The vast Netherworld, eternally monotonous gray, various sorts and varieties of undead creatures engaged in never-ending combat, void of any signs of life. In this place there was no alternating day and night, no sense of time passing, only deathly stillness and bleak coldness. On the desolate earth under the gray sky, the undead creatures complied with ancient teachings, unceasingly scrambling for a more extensive territory. However, they were unaware of the reason for all of this. Han Sha'o followed the connection he had with the little skeleton, drifting like a spirit in the little skeleton's direction. As there wasn't a concept of time, Han Sha'o didn't know how long he had been in this world. As he headed toward the little skeleton, Han Sha'o came across many different kinds of undead creatures. Many of the undead creatures had extended their sharp claws toward Han Sha'o, attempting to swallow Han Sha'o, who appeared weak. Facing Han Sha'o's soul tremor magic, the low-ranked undead creatures were usually destroyed by the magic that directly attacked the soul. As for higher-ranked undead creatures, Han Sha'o's consciousness was able to sense the existence. By means of his sensing ability, Han Sha'o was able to determine the strength of those undead creatures and actively avoid the ancient undead creatures detouring around their territories as he continued in the direction of the little skeleton. After what seemed to be quite some time, Han Sha'o felt the distance between the little skeleton and him becoming closer and closer. Furthermore, with the connection between the two of them, he became aware that the little skeleton was currently rushing toward him. This made Han Sha'o feel touched, moved that even without any orders due to its worry for him, the little skeleton had traveled from far away just to find him. In the netherworld, where the death chi was incomparably rich, Han Sha'o, who was in the form of a ghost, was constantly tempering his mental strength, attempting to manipulate this world's death chi through his demonic powers. Gradually, Han Sha'o even discovered some insights. Demonic magic was famous for being able to live forever as long as their consciousness wasn't completely destroyed. In the separate demon realm, cultivators' souls would become consciousnesses, possessing many extraordinary uses. Even if a demonic practitioner's corporeal body is destroyed, as long as the consciousness is strong enough to attach onto another physical body, the practitioner can use this new body to practice demonic chronic magic once again. They would only require to spend 100 years to regain their previous strength. Being transported into this bizarre world, Han Sha-O searched for a way to return to the profound continent, as well as using this strand of consciousness to seek a way to increase his own strength. Before he could find the method in returning to the profound continent, Han Sha-O first needed to ensure he could survive in this foreign world. Slowly, Han Sha-O's existing consciousness had a strange reaction to the death chi. As Han Sha-O continued experimenting, he was now totally able to absorb and manipulate the omnipresent death chi in this world, so much so that he could even form weapons from the death chi to attack the undead creatures that had ill intentions. At the start, Han Sha-O could only condense the death chi into the form of arrows and control the arrows with his consciousness. This was only threatening toward the low-ranked skeleton warriors and zombie warriors, and wasn't even comparable to the simple bone spear spell. As Han Sha-O's consciousness gradually understood the uses of the death chi, he could now completely utilize his consciousness to condense formidable attacks as long as he is given time. The strength of these attacks could even surpass Han Sha-O's soul tremor. As a few days passed, Han Sha-O's consciousness could gradually condense the death chi to give rise to more clever uses. Han Sha-O even experimented with a skeleton remains of excellent quality, condensing the death chi within the bones and forging a skeletal body for himself. Contained within the pure white skeleton was the death chi condensed by Han Sha-O's consciousness. Under the reckless suppression of Han Sha-O's consciousness, the death chi became crystal-like spots hidden within the bones. However, the quality of the remains of an ordinary skeleton warrior wasn't much. When Han Sha-O tried to condense even more death chi within the bones, they weren't able to withstand the death chi and thus exploded. Utilizing this sparkling jade-like skeletal remains, Han Sha-O was able to intimidate many undead creatures that attempted to attack him. Even a few high-ranked evil knights who saw Han Sha-O's huge skeleton that glittered with white light withdrew with dread. The evil knights clearly took Han Sha-O's jade-like skeleton as a skeleton king, which was at the peak of undead creatures. Skeleton kings as well as bone dragons were peak existences among undead creatures. A skeleton king's body contained incomparably rich death chi and posse's terrifying strength. Weak undead creatures were simply not its match. However, Han Sha-O knew that purely using death chi to condense a skeletal body would definitely pale in contrast to a skeleton king's body and would even be much weaker than the bones on a bone demon. Yet Han Sha-O wasn't discouraged, continuing to silently delve into the uses of his consciousness in this world as he searched for a way to return to the profound continent. He also felt that the distance between the little skeleton and himself was getting closer and closer. As Han Sha-O passed through an overgrown valley shrouded in rich death chi, his consciousness suddenly detected a few formidable auras. These auras were abnormally chaotic and unstable, as though currently engaged in a huge battle. In the surrounds were many low-ranked undead creatures fighting against one another, clearly originating from different factions. Looking at the overgrown valley from afar, Han Sha-O noticed clouds of dense blue chi within the rich death chi. These blue chi rose in spirals, slowly diffusing from within the valley. Some of the low-ranked undead creatures who were battling extended their necks to absorb the blue clouds of gas as though they were an exquisite feast. In this desolate netherworld there rarely appeared colors that weren't monochrome. In the period of time that Han Sha-O has been in this world, this was the first time he saw a blue color existing. This made Han Sha-O feel astonished as he looked toward the magnificent battle. As he sensed the combat between the few auras inside the valley, Han Sha-O had some suspicions of the scene within. While Han Sha-O was being puzzled, the dense blue chi had slowly spread to the area where Han Sha-O was in. The wisps of blue chi entered Han Sha-O's consciousness. The mental energy that had been consumed seemed to be replenished, recovering little by little. Han Sha-O was incessantly surprised. Originally he only allowed the dense blue chi that touched him to seep into his body. However, when Han Sha-O felt the benefits the blue chi gave to the mental strength of his consciousness, he immediately started operating his consciousness, analyzing the blue chi within the valley and using the strength of his consciousness to slowly draw the blue chi towards himself. This period of time Han Sha-O spent every day researching how to utilize the strength of his consciousness to manipulate the rich death chi that was everywhere in this world toward this blue chi, which was of a completely different nature but yet had the same characteristics as the chi in the nether otherworld, Han Shao very quickly found the trick in sucking in the blue chi. When Han Shao went all out in operating his consciousness, a large portion of death chi that diffused out from the heart of the valley was subjected to the pull from Han Shao's consciousness, slowly injuring him. Han Shao's originally exhausted mental strength gradually recovered following the absorption of the blue chi. The numerous undead creatures in the surroundings of the valley were still engaged in intense battle. The grey earth was covered in broken bones and rotting flesh. Under the orders of their respective masters, these low-ranked undead creatures recklessly fought with each other, yet didn't forget to avariciously absorb the strands of drifting dense blue chi. With a moment of effort, Han Shao utilized his consciousness to absorb large amounts of blue chi, recovering 80% of his mental strength. There was no longer any more blue chi spreading out from the heart of the valley, and the blue chi that was further away were either absorbed by the numerous undead creatures or had vanished. In the form of a pure white skeleton, Han Shao stood in an area extremely far from the valley. After hesitating for a moment, he suddenly headed for the heart of the valley. At the same time, Han Shao could sense that the little skeleton was getting nearer and nearer. Han Shao felt from the cloud of dense blue chi that permeated out that there must be a mysterious item in the heart of the valley. An item that could grow one's mental strength was rarely heard of in the profound continent. Han Shao never would have thought that in this foreign, eternally desolate otherworld would actually have such an extraordinary item. What made Han Shao more apprehensive was that when Han Shao absorbed the dense blue chi, there was actually an indistinct familiar feeling. At the start, Han Shao didn't react, only reacting. He stopped absorbing after the dense blue chi no longer spread from within the valley. Apparently, when he was previously beneath the cemetery of death, Han Shao had absorbed some kind of special energy which made his mental strength grow substantially. The feeling he had when he absorbed that energy was similar to when he was absorbing the dense blue chi. However, previous that energy was boundless, directly allowing Han Shao to possess the mental strength of a grand magus. When he had just absorbed the dense blue chi, it fell way short of that energy, but it definitely had a similar aura. Who knows what item is within the valley that is actually able to give off such a mysterious blue chi? It was precisely this suspicion that led Han Shao to still decide to go into the valley and investigate, even though he sensed a few undead creatures that could threaten his existence. The jade-like white skeletal baddie was larger than ordinary skeleton warriors. At approximately 1.8 meters tall, it currently headed toward the source of the battle. Along the way, many low-ranked skeleton and zombie warriors immediately divided a portion of their forces to attack Han Shao's condensed body when they noticed another enemy faction approaching. En route, Han Shao's consciousness started manipulating death chi. When the skeleton warriors and zombie warriors have crowded around, a crescent-shaped grayish-white light beam condensed purely from death chi suddenly shot out from the front of his large skeletal body. The more than 10 skeleton warriors and zombie warriors that were the first to crowd around were struck by the condensed light beam. Their frail souls were unable to bear the power, collapsing in succession and dissipating. With a wave of cracking sounds, the bones of the skeleton warriors fell apart. The zombie warriors had also become heaps of rotting flesh and falling over. A light beam condensed from death chi flashed past. More than 10 skeleton warriors and zombie warriors collapsed. Another group of skeleton warriors and zombie warriors which had intended to come over paused for a moment. Under the powerful strength that Han Shao deliberately released, they realized this skeleton warrior was much larger. Its bones were more sparkly and translucent, different from their own bodies. Of these low-ranked undead creatures, many of them had never seen a skeleton king. However, from the moment they were born, there was an imprint of this high-ranked undead creature on their soul. When they examined the body Han Shao condensed carefully, they mistook Han Shao as the skeleton king at the peak of all undead creatures. A path suddenly appeared voluntarily. These undead creatures still fought with each other, but not one undead creature dared to intercept Han Shao anymore, as though ignoring Han Shao's existence. However, Han Shao knew this was their instinctive reaction toward high-ranked undead creatures. The voluntarily formed path directly led to the depths of the valley. These low-ranked undead creatures knew Han Shao's objective was the depths of the valley. They expectedly provided a clear passage. Clang, clang. Han Shao's consciousness controlled this condensed skeletal body, heading toward the valley a step at a time. The surrounding undead creatures still fought furiously, but not one undead creature got in Han Shao's way. away. At the center of the valley, the few formidable undead creatures still fought against each other. Han Shao was able to sense their vast strength. As he entered deep into the valley, Han Shao gradually slowed his steps, starting to cautiously size up the situation all around, preparing to immediately depart in an unfavorable situation. The surroundings were filled with even more undead creatures that incessantly fought. As there were many hate warriors and a few evil knights mixed within the undead creatures here, Han Shao knew that he was already approaching his target. Han Shao deliberately released an unyielding posture as he passed through these higher-ranked undead creatures, finally entering the heart of the valley. A clear pitch-black spring immediately entered Han Shao's sight, a sinister-looking plant floating on the spring. It had many branches that were spread out, appearing menacing yet devilishly beautiful, like a man-eating flower. Its branches and leaves appeared like countless withered hands propping a cloud of blue smoke. Within the blue smoke there was an eyeball-sized teardrop similar to a sapphire shooting out resplendent bizarre light. Chapter 385, Evolution of Undead Creatures. In this monochromatic world, Han Shao was truly stunned when he first glanced at that vibrant color. In the middle of the pitch-black spring, that sinister-looking plant slush, a network of withered branches propped up a hazy cloud of blue gas. Within the cloud, a drop of sapphire-shaped resplendent teardrop gave off an even more magnificent radiance. Han Shao was sure that the blue gas that had previously spread out from within the valley should have originated from the plant in the middle of the spring. From Han Shao's perspective, he could clearly see that the blue gas had originated from the revolving teardrop in the middle of the blue cloud. The pitch-black spring was brimming with desolation and deathly stillness. Organisms being nurtured from this sort of weird spring would definitely be fierce undead creatures or plants, and there certainly would not be any amicable existences. Han Shao carefully examined the black spring, realizing that there were many seaweed-like black plants floating within the spring. These plants had blended into the spring, the tentacle-like streamers spreading in the constant sway of the spring water, appearing like they wanted to capture something and pull it into the depths of the spring. Once he had finished observing the layout of the center of the valley, Han Shao's line of sight started looking indiscriminately around the spring. Only now did he notice several undead creatures battling in the vicinity of the black spring. A mummy lord, a floating apparition, and a 5 to 6 meter tall knight that rode a large flaming horse and brandishing a broadsword. These three high-ranked undead creatures surrounded the spring in the middle as they engaged one another in intense combat. Han Shao had only swept his eyes over, his attention concentrated on that huge knight that rode the large flaming horse. The huge knight held a gigantic broadsword which was full of rusted spots. The broadsword was over 2 meters in length and was brimming with a rotting aura. The huge knight's appearance resembled that of an evil knight. However, there were barbs that grew from around its arms, knees and shoulders. Its build was also much taller than an evil knight's. Han Shao had some impression of this huge knight. A long time ago, when the little skeleton was still quite weak, Han Shao had once received the little skeleton's distress message. At that time, Han Shao immediately summoned the little skeleton to the profound continent out of worry. However, through the strength of their contract, Han Shao still faintly saw the formidable undead creature that was chasing the little skeleton. That formidable undead creature was precisely this huge knight. For this peculiar knight to be able to force the little skeleton to flee the netherworld, its strength was nationally extremely valiant. Han Shao would never have imagined that he would meet this formidable undead creature in the netherworld. The mummy lord and the floating apparition had joined hands in facing this huge knight. Han Shao was incomparably familiar with the mummy lord. However, the floating apparition was rather unfamiliar to him. What made Han Shao extremely astonished was that this mummy lord carried a grayish-white sarcophagus which was large enough to fit his entire body. This mummy lord clearly wielded that sarcophagus as a weapon, proficiently manipulating the sarcophagus to face the enemy. The majority of the strikes from the terrifying knight's 2-meter-long broadsword were blocked by the sarcophagus. As for that floating apparition, Han Shao did not know at all what undead creature it was. However, Han Shao could sense from its body the aura of the most common undead creature in the netherworld, the wraith. Merely the aura on the apparition was exponentially stronger than that of a wraith. The floating apparition constantly hid behind the mummy lord, behaving like a magician in the profound continent, utilizing profound magic to attack that huge knight. Ripples of gray magic shot out in waves from the apparition's direction, attacking the huge knight's body. Under Han Shao's attentive gaze, the knight's 2-meter-long rusted twisted broadsword suddenly thrusted. The carrion belt in the mummy lord's hands moved, the sarcophagus floating above his head striking towards that broadsword. At this moment there was a terrifying boom when the knight's broadsword struck the sarcophagus, and the sarcophagus suddenly flew up into the air. The knight took the opportunity to urge the flaming horse toward the mummy lord. The flaming horse suddenly breathed out a spout of flames that rolled toward the mummy lord. The mummy lord was obviously a little frantic, as the sarcophagus flying above his head couldn't be moved so quickly. At this moment the floating apparition behind him suddenly transmitted a bizarre soul undulation. Countless wraiths suddenly swam out from within the apparition's body, forming a tidy formation and blocking the flame breath. It simply utilized many wraiths to drown out the flames from the flaming horse. The apparition had obstructed the flaming horse's flame breath, and the sarcophagus that flew into the sky had also been caught by the mummy lord just in time to block the evil knight's next attack. The three undead creatures continued fighting, once again being tangled in a stalemate. The low-ranked undead creatures were still fighting ferociously in Han Sha'o's surroundings. These undead creatures clearly felt the formidable aura from Han Sha'o's body, but all of them ignored Han Sha'o's existence. This allowed Han Sha'o to peacefully watch the battle, taking in the whole scene of the battle between the three unusual undead creatures. Han Sha'o stared at that floating apparition for a long time before he suddenly understood. To be able to control that many wraiths and also carry the aura of wraiths on its body, the apparition was surely a high-ranked undead creature that had evolved from wraiths. That particularly queer huge knight was most likely an evolution from an evil knight. In the netherworld, where ranks were rigid, most higher ranked creatures possessed extremely large fighting strengths. However, this was not absolute. Lower ranked undead creatures had the possibility of undergoing evolution and become higher ranked undead creatures as well. For example, the majority of skeleton kings that could be as strong as a bone dragon had fortuitous occurrences and were naturally produced. However, there were also skeleton kings which could have been the lowliest skeleton that underwent countless evolutions. Although the probability was extremely small, it existed. Spirits in the netherworld could swallow each other. If low-ranked undead creatures were able to swallow the spirit of a formidable bone dragon, they could substantially improve a few stages. Merely this probability was extremely low. Typically, weaker undead creatures would only instinctively escape when facing someone higher rank than them. They would never dare to attack unless they had a master, and only under their master's orders would they disregard their lives and attack. However, even if they attacked when facing a higher ranked undead creature, there would never be any flukes and would definitely be massacred, let alone being able to swallow the spiritual strength of a higher ranked undead creature. Most of the low ranked undead creatures that were able to evolve had coincidentally come across high ranked undead creatures that were almost killed by even stronger undead creatures. While the even stronger undead creature had not arrived, they were then able to conveniently swallow the spirit of the higher ranked undead creature. Taking the formidable bone dragon as an example, it could kill or seriously injure a group of hate warriors with one breath. The spirits of these lower ranked undead creatures were of no interest to the bone dragon. If there just happened to be a skeleton or zombie warrior in the vicinity after the bone dragon left, they would be able to conveniently devour a higher ranked hate warrior's spirit. When such a low probability matter repeatedly happens on a low ranked undead creature, the low ranked undead creature that had swallowed the spirits of many high-ranked undead creatures would be able to gradually evolve and become a high-ranked undead creature that surpassed its birth restrictions. This apparition was perhaps an example of such an existence that had extremely astonishing luck. Han Sha'o looked at the alliance of the apparition and the mummy lord withstanding the knight's assault, and then looked at the sapphire-like teardrop which contained bizarre energy that was being dropped in the middle of the spring by sinister-looking plants' network of branches. His thoughts were filled with indecision, not knowing if he should take advantage of the situation to obtain the teardrop. The three formidable undead creatures appeared to also be fighting over that drop of liquid in the middle of the spring. The huge knight's strength was incredibly astonishing, with Han Sha'o's condensed body of the skeleton king probably unable to withstand a strike of that knight's broadsword. Furthermore, that apparition and mummy lord were also enemies. Han Sha'o wasn't confident in handling them without having his true body. However, Han Shao knew that the sapphire-like liquid in the middle of the spring was able to improve his mental strength. Such miraculous items were unheard of in the profound continent. To have reached this place after much difficulty, the greed in his heart simply couldn't be contained. While Han Shao was hesitating again and again, he sensed that little skeleton was closing in on his location. Suddenly the knight that was in the midst of chasing the mummy lord and the apparition appeared extremely irritated. After continuously attacking frantically to no avail, the knight suddenly gave up and urged the flaming horse toward the plant in the middle of the spring. The mummy lord and the apparition paused for a moment before hastily attacking the knight. The mummy lord's sarcophagus descended toward the knight with a loud rumble, while the apparition produced numerous wraiths that charged towards the huge knight. The huge knight did a sweep with his rusted broadsword. An earth-shattering rotting aura rippled out, abruptly annihilating the numerous wraiths, while the sarcophagus was struck into the air with his fist. After that, an imposing consciousness spread out from the huge knight. "You two cowardly and despicable existences, that fellow from the 1,000-meter dead mountain palace is coming over. If you cooperate with me in getting rid of him, the luster gem within the dead water is yours. I only want that fellow's spiritual energy. What do you think?" When the mummy lord and the apparition saw the evil knight give up and transmit such an intention, they were obviously slightly unsettled. The two of them discussed for a while before the apparition transmitted a faint message. "All right, the three of us shall make a vow to abide by this promise." Han Shao looked at the interaction between the three formidable undead creatures from afar. From their conversations, Han Shao understood that the large knight sensed the little skeleton's existence, and their tone indicated their fear of the little skeleton. Han Shao couldn't have imagined that in this netherworld the little skeleton of the 1,000-meter dead mountain palace was actually such a huge power. The huge knight, the mummy lord and the apparition intended to ally due to their apprehension toward the little skeleton's existence. As these three fellows dared to stay behind and face the little skeleton, that shows that they should have some confidence. Han Shao, who had already been watching for a while from afar, thought for a moment before walking out from within the crowd of low-ranked undead creatures. "Count me in as well." Han Shao sent a message through his consciousness expressing his opinion to the three undead creatures. At the start, Han Shao had only stood among the crowd of low-ranked undead creatures in the surroundings of the valley, having deliberately hidden as he watched the three undead creatures that were constantly battling did not notice Han Shao. When Han Shao slowly walked out from the distance, he immediately caused the three undead creatures to panic. At first, the three undead creatures clearly lost their heads out of fear of being intimidated by Han Shao's appearance as a skeleton king. However, these three formidable undead creatures were different from the low-ranked undead creatures that gave way to Han Shao. They could sense from the aura on Han Shao's body that it wasn't identical to a skeleton king's aura, as well as the aura on Han Shao's body wasn't as frightening as that of a skeleton king's. After being startled, the huge knight reacted, sending Han Shao a message: "Cowardly voyeur, what can you contribute and what do you wish to obtain?" "I want a third of the serene luster gem. I can aid you in dealing with that fellow," Han Shao replied through his consciousness. "That would depend on your ability." The knight sent an irascible message, driving the flaming horse toward Han Shao. The earth-shattering rotting aura spread out from his body, converging on the broadsword as it stabbed toward Han Shao. Han Shao was stunned, frantically chanting spells on one hand, sending a spray of bone spears to attack the huge knight on the other hand, using his consciousness to condense the rich death chi, forming a gigantic saber to smash toward the charging knight. When the spray of bone spears landed on the huge knight's body, it only resulted in clanking sounds, unable to harm the formidable knight. Only when that saber condensed from rich death chi smashed on the knight's broadsword did he obstruct his attack. Just as the knight avoided the spray of bone spears and had almost arrived in front of Han Shao, he suddenly reined his horse, turning his head to look at the apparition and the mummy lord, transmitting: "He has the qualifications to share a third of the luster gem. Do the two of you have any opinion?" "The fellow from the 1,000-meter death mountain palace is extremely frightening. There is more hope with an additional helper." The two other undead creatures hesitated for a moment, but when considering the little skeleton's frightening deterrence and their interest of the serene luster gem, they ultimately agreed completely with the huge knight's proposal, considering Han Shao as an ally.